For more than 50 days in Iran, the Islamic Republic has used a strategy in the streets in Iran as a way to prevent an uprising. And what they have been doing is key to their survival, and not enough people are talking about it. It's important to understand why are they doing it, why I think it will backfire, and maybe try to figure out how we could use this to our advantage. After the massacre in early January and after Operation Epic Fury, the Islamic Republic has been terrified, justifiably, of the next uprising of the Iranian people. After what they witnessed the Iranian people are capable of, and the numbers of Iranian people who are ready to come into the streets to sacrifice their lives to take down the regime, the Islamic Republic has used many different strategies to try to avoid that from ever happening again. And they know that they're now not in a good position to defend themselves against the next uprising. One of their main strategies is that they have brought proxy groups inside Iran from outside of Iran. But that's not what I'm going to focus in this video. What they have done is that they have had street gatherings of regime supporters every single night for the past more than 50 days. And these street gatherings are getting more and more elaborate. They're bringing in more activities, more entertainment, more creative ways to encourage people to come out into the streets. They're handing out money, they're giving out free food, they give people rice and cooking oil. They are constantly advertising it on state media with live feed. They have a lot of hijabless women there advertising, encouraging boys to come over there. They interview hijabless girls, talking about them being single and looking for boys. Hijabless girls that just a while ago would have gotten arrested for being hijabless are now one of the main tools of the Islamic Republic to try to encourage people to come into the streets. They have music, they have concerts, they have big screens of hijabless women singing, and they have everything from very religious events for those types that want that to very fake patriotic symbolism and events to try to encourage a wider audience from coming. They have very religious looking type men and women and very liberal looking men and women and hijabless women. And they love interviewing the hijabless women to show that they're appealing to a wider demographic and to encourage more people to come. They're out in the streets. They have a lot of loud music, a lot of loud religious music, constantly chanting every single night. And they try to make the crowds bigger and bigger, constantly showing it live on state TV, amplifying the voices of the minority pro-regime people, while at the same time completely censoring the majority anti-regime Iranians by cutting the internet, by punishing any form of dissent, by increasing the number of executions of the people who protested as a way to scare the public from trying anything else, reminding them that even though that they're pathetically weak against the Americans and the Israelis, they could still hurt you. And if you look at the videos and the things that they're trying to keep the crowds in the streets, it's very telling because it shows how they know that the Iranian people are eager to do another uprising. It's interesting because a lot of Western commentators believe that the Iranian people are not going to do an uprising, but the Islamic Republic's assessment is that they're very eager to do an uprising. Another thing that I notice is that the Islamic Republic constantly tells these people how important they are and how they are saving the regime and the regime owes them, which is actually making the expectations of the regime supporters who come into the streets higher because they think that their sacrifice coming out every night in the streets is supporting the regime so much that the regime needs to listen to their demands, especially their demands when it comes to not negotiating with the Americans, to not to open the Strait of Hormuz, not to capitulate or give in to any of the American demands. Telling the regime supporters how important they are is making them feel important and more demanding of the regime. But that's not the real backfire I want to talk about. The real backfire is that they're getting on people's nerves. And that might seem like a minor issue, but it's big. Let me explain it using my own story because I grew up in Iran and I lived there for more than 20 years. And growing up in Iran, I lived in two completely separate worlds. My home was very liberal and secular, but when you go to school, everything gets a lot more religious. When you turn on the TV, there's a lot of pro-regime propaganda. But then when you come back home, when you go to family gatherings, it's a completely different environment. Even if you have religious family members, you don't really notice it that much. They're just some people in your family that fast and pray, and they're the odd ones out. And depending on how religious your family is, they're either the odd ones or it's a norm, but it's not the same level of religious and pro-regime propaganda that you're exposed to when you turn on the TV or go to school. These are two separate worlds. My experience, my family and our family friends were a lot more liberal and compared to the school environment. And that it wasn't just me. All my friends were like that. Everybody in school, the religious teachings and the pro-regime propaganda is just something you go through, you're used to it, but you don't take it very seriously. And once class finishes, those are considered like boring, uncool stuff that you just have to tolerate. And it's just a norm. But then the thing is that when you come home and you're having fun, you're having your entertainment, or you're meeting with friends or family, you keep that separate. It's not interesting, it's annoying, it's not cool, and you don't really allow that to get into your personal life. Especially for people on middle class or upper middle class, for many people in that category, it's uncool unless you are somehow connected to the regime or something like that. This was my experience in Iran. And this was years ago. I haven't been in Iran for the past 20 years. Imagine if this was my experience 20 years ago. I'm assuming that after I left, things got even more like this, especially because of the internet and social media. That separation between these two worlds made many people able to have a somewhat normal life, separate from that religious BS. And every time in our personal life outside of that environment, this managed to somehow get through. So, for example, where I lived in Tehran, we had a neighbor that was religious. And during Ashura, which is a religious day, these people would have turned on their loudspeakers and played really loud religious stuff about Hussein. I remember this was not just annoying to me, this was annoying to our entire family, to our entire extended family. We lived in, all of our extended family lived in the one apartment, and everybody was extremely annoyed by that, including people in our family who actually prayed. And this was just once every year, and it was really hard to tolerate, especially because it would start like really early in the morning. Over the years, since I left, given how more separate these two worlds become as more Iranian people are interested in a more modern, more secular life, and also given the level of cruelty and brutality of regime has made more Iranian people hate the entire package of the Islamic Republic's ideology and would get more annoyed by it if this was imposed on them in their personal life. What is happening right now is not surprising to me, and let me tell you what's happening. We're getting a lot of messages from inside Iran telling us that these daily gatherings of the regime supporters and all of their chanting and the loud noises and the religious messaging and even the parts that are patriotic, they hate that even more because they know that they're just pretending to be patriotic and this is being used as a tool. Right now, the majority anti-regime Iranians, they have to go through this every single day. The wall between these two worlds has been broken because they're out there in the streets every day, and the anti-regime Iranians cannot avoid seeing these people and their loud noises. And the fact that they're doing this after the greatest massacre upon the Iranian people in our modern history is like putting salt on their wound. So think about this. A major big part of Iranian population has separated that world from them, from their personal lives, and also has learned to hate the Islamic Republic even more than before because of all the crimes that they committed. Right after the Islamic Republic committed the greatest act of massacre upon the Iranian people in early January, they now are getting exposed to pro-regime ceremonies and rituals and songs every single day in the streets. And they have to go through them and see them all the time, all while their voice has been cut from the world, while they're already looking for revenge against the Islamic Republic without seeing these people in front of them every single day. And now the very same people who support the regime that has oppressed them and has killed and tortured and raped their loved ones, every single day they're seeing them celebrating, singing, and acting tough and strong against the Iranian people. And the level of anger and frustration that this is causing is hard to explain how huge this is. It's hard to believe that the Iranian people could have gotten more frustrated and angry at the Islamic Republic after what they witnessed the Islamic Republic did to the Iranian people early January. But somehow these daily protests has achieved the impossible. They have somehow made the Iranian people more frustrated and even more angry. And we are getting constant reports from inside Iran regarding the level of anger that this is causing. And the prediction by many people is that this level of frustration that the Islamic Republic is causing right now is going to cause an uprising with a number and a level of anger at some point much bigger than what we even saw in early January. Many Iranian people are suggesting that when we came out in January, we came out to protest. But the next time we come out, we're going to come out to kill. And I think the Islamic Republic knows that doing this every night is causing a level of anger that is not manageable among the anti-regime Iranian people, but it has no choice to continue because it's afraid that if it leaves the streets empty while it's also dealing with the Americans and Israelis, while it's also in a situation that it hasn't yet managed to repair the suppressing forces that it has lost because of the American and Israeli attacks, then in the middle of all the issues that it has to deal with right now, it is going to have an uprising on its hands as well, and it will not be able to defend itself against an uprising right now. It needs more time to recover, especially because the lack of air defense means that it will be easy for the Israeli drones to come and provide support to Iranian people if they do an uprising now. The regime's calculations are short-term, and you might think that is not smart because everything it's doing is hurting the Islamic Republic long-term while saving it in the short term. You might think that the Islamic Republic is making bad decisions, sacrificing the long-term, having to pay a higher price for what it's doing in the long term while only getting short-term benefits. But the regime is actually not being stupid here. The reason why it's forced to focus on the short term is because it needs to survive the short term. It can't afford to think about the long-term consequences of what it's doing, because if it doesn't survive the next 48 hours every time, then there will be no long-term consequences to deal with because it wouldn't be around to deal with those long-term consequences. That's why the Islamic Republic right now has no choice but to think in short-term benefits. Taking all of this into account, if the goal is to topple the Islamic Republic, and if we understand that the final push that will topple the Islamic Republic is an uprising by the Iranian people, it's very important to understand this dynamic, because the justified anger of the Iranian people needs to be weaponized and directed in the most effective way at the right time against the Islamic Republic. And having a better understanding of the dynamics and the different reasons and the different trigger and the different narratives from each side and how it's affecting each side, both when it comes to motivation or demoralization or anger or fear on both sides of this fight, makes us a lot more well equipped to come up with the proper response. I could get into a lot more detail about this topic, but I want to make sure I keep this video short. So if you want to talk to me and ask me questions about any of these or any other topic, come and talk to me in our discussion group. I'm there almost every single day. The link is below or in the channel bio. Let me know in the comment section if you found this helpful and educational. These types of comments really motivate me to make more videos. My name is Armin Navabi. I'm Israel Chai. Long live America. Javid Shah. Payande Iran.